Hello, I'm Kath Johnson. I'm involved with Eco Church through the diocesan working group and also through the Eco Church group in my own church in Llangors. And it occurred to us that for many people, decisions that are advised by those who want us to live more sustainably involve, in terms of food, going down to the supermarket and choosing something from a different shelf. But for those of us living in what's a very largely rural diocese, those decisions aren't just a case of, well, shall I pick this or that off the shelf? It's a case of something which affects our friends, our neighbours, often our families, because this is an area where so many people are involved in farming. And so in order to find out a little bit more about how current attitudes are affecting farming and how farmers are trying their best to farm in a more sustainable way, I've come to the Little Hill farm near Glasbury to talk to my friend Hal, who will tell you something about the farm he and his wife Becky.
Who is actually the farmer? I'm
You're the farmer.
I just chase the animals around. Yeah, I'm Hal Drysdale, and thank you very much for visiting, Kath. Obviously, like you say, we do know each other. Yes, we farm here just above Glasbury, on a smaller farm, and we do rent more land across below the bluff, which you can see behind us, from some other great friends over there. We have Hereford cattle and some Romney sheep, who, again, genetics for the Romneys are from a farm just over the hill, so you could probably see and source where all the animals are from. The Herefords, some of the line come from this farm and have been in this area from the original herd book, so going right back 150 years. So it's we're privileged.
It really is local providence.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, in fact, and the grass is has just as much provenance. It's all permanent lays, permanent pasture. All of it has been here and self-seeded for hundreds of years. We've missed all of the chemical inputs. The previous farmer to us and his family go right back to before the 50s. So they never put any herbicides or chemicals down at all, and the animals haven't had any in those early days, minimal where possible. So yeah, we're really privileged to take that on and to try and keep that up. So yeah, that's a little bit about us anyway. That's we're trying our best and learning on the way. So yeah.
And as you said, it's mainly cattle and sheep. Which you grow for meat according to organic principles.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, although we're not registered organic, we very much believe and do agree with the principles of having avoiding those chemicals, avoiding those inputs. And I think very much more we've been aligned with regenerative farming practices.
Yes.
And the group of farmers around us, and in this area there are so many good farmers who've been and have taken that aboard from well before us, the regenerative farming and much more holistic and much more well-managed farms, really. So we've had lots of advice. We've had lots of meetups with these farmers, and we've even gone as far as, luckily, having we're probably nearly 3 years into soil research with the same farmers and others around the area. So yeah, we've done a lot in the 8-9 years we've been here, really. So.
Yes. And I know you have a real interest in not only the soil, but all there is in it, the fungi, the microorganisms.
Yeah, probably too much. So in fact, Becky noticed that I've got more pictures of soil and cow poo than I have of maybe our own children. But when you start looking at where the grass comes from, you can't help but, sorry to use the pun, but going down that rabbit hole, really. The fungi and the bacteria have been really interesting. I mean, well beyond my expertise, but really interesting because it does inform us of I think the word uses biodiversity really, beyond those things that we can see, and actually how important what we can't see is. We've been lucky to have soil testing, which has given us DNA sampling, taxonomic sampling of what's in the soil, and we're lucky to continue with funding for a PhD candidate who is now in place and has started, Annie, and Annie is looking at maybe as an impact from our study, how the communication of information on farming is practiced, and the benefits of that. So it's really quite diverse.
And I know from what you were telling me earlier that the biodiversity below ground leads to the biodiversity we can see in terms of birds, mammals, insects.
Yeah, exactly. The pink and fluffy bits above the ground. We very much so. I think that's why it's so interesting.
Yes. I'd love to see your hares gambling on the hill.
Yeah, there's plenty. Come back in March. there's so many. The life above definitely demonstrates that we got plenty in the ground. So I'm happy about that. And it's. I think really the biggest lesson for me is how little I know about all of this. It's wonderful to see.
I think it's a learning process for all of us.
Yeah,
we're all trying to find out how to live sustainably with what we've been given. And it's not always easy, but it's a worthwhile
endeavours
to have.
Yeah. I mean, very much the journey, isn't it? It's very much the journey. I think here we've started, I mean, just thinking about biodiversity, we've started here on really trying to think on the way we practice, which has the least impact probably, because we don't know, because we're new to this, we didn't know what really we should be doing. Should we be going more conventional, or should we try and continue with what the previous farmer had started, which really quite revolutionary, considering that the pressure on him in the 70s was from the ministry and others was to buy in chemicals, to buy in feed, to really push the speed of growth of animals and go for these other metrics. Whereas luckily we chose to stick with his principles and say, what if we don't have to? And then from that, I guess the harder part is practicing it. What is it that we do or don't do, which will see good animal health? I say reasonable growth because we're not looking for fast growth in the animals.
No.
Because we're not under any economic constraints there.
No.
If that makes sense. So
this is where you would recognise that you differ from large.
We're privileged.
Agriculture. You're in a different position.
Yeah, we're very small scale.
Farm, which is sort of 500 acres, and has to make that pay.
Indeed. We haven't got the burden of the monthly rents, and bear in mind that a significant portion of Welsh farms are rented.
Yes.
Is it a third? We haven't got the mortgage, which we're very lucky. So we're in a privileged position to be doing what we're doing, and therefore make discoveries for ourselves, learning for ourselves, and to try and be more sustainable, I guess, to sort of use a word that's commonly thrown about. But yeah, we've been given the chance to make these choices, which I guess would go against the sort of wisdom of business. You've got to turn it over quickly. You've got to make those margins, move the bottom line. So
so you say you feel privileged to be in that position.
Very much so. Yeah, and that's, I guess, the second privilege is that's brought us the time to meet the people who are already doing it and have already demonstrated that you can do it. And all of those are within a stone's throw from here.
So you've got quite a community of like-minded.
Very good network of people. And in fact, it's funny you mentioned 500-acre farms, but 2 or 3 of those farms, maybe more, are exactly that. They're large 500-acre farms, all practicing
Practicing
regenerative
regenerative principles.
Exactly, and they're doing very well.
Oh,
Very
well. That's encouraging.
They're ahead of the curve, really. Yeah, very much so. The other nice thing about those farmers is that they come with a wealth of history and experience, both conventional and well, in fact, I'd like to say new techniques, but I think you mentioned it earlier. We're talking about the grandfather's techniques and the great grandfather's techniques going back into play. It's nice. It really is about managing not just the land, the farm, but also managing the time that we get with our family as well. So we're not as tied. We can let the animals grow and do the other bits. So you're right, Bill. Hey, come on. You shouldn't be up, should you? You should be down. Down. Come on. Home. Good dog.
And you were telling me you've done there was some tree planting on the farm before, and you've planted more.
Yes, we have. Yeah, we've got on the farm about 2.5 acres of trees that were here.
Yeah.
About 2 acres, and there's an extra acre or so since the previous farmer planted and we planted as well. So he made an effort to plant more trees every year.
Yes.
And that doesn't include hedgerows. So we've got a fair bit of hedgerows as well. Which
if you look very good for wildlife.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's got to be already 10% of the farm must be either trees or hedgerow currently, and really we're quite thankful for the grass, because the grass does as much and works as hard, if not harder, than many of the plants in doing the good things.
In terms of things like carbon capture, you mean?
Yeah, indeed, yeah. Which is maybe a subject that I'm not qualified to talk on, but I know for certain that this permanent pasture certainly has done a great deal over its history, and we've done as little as possible to try and change that. So hopefully we haven't liberated any carbon.
So doing is treading as lightly as possible on the soil and working with nature. It's a cooperative venture.
That's a really nice way of putting it. Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it. Yeah, really nice. There must be a really nice word to explain, but we're trying to work with what we have, as opposed to against it. So we're not trying to push the natural processes any faster.
No.
By chemical inputs or otherwise. We're not trying to limit nature's ability to take over using herbicides. We don't need to do that, because actually we have cattle and they know what they want, and sward diversity for them is brilliant. In fact, they'll eat this grass all day long, and it's amazingly rich. They grow, and the farm where we take them, the holding we take them during the summer, the grass there is fantastic. We always get nice thick briskets when they come back. So and happy cows. So
what about animal health?
Animal health, do you know, we have, I guess with sheep it's quite easy to answer that, because you have 2 states of sheep, don't you?
Yeah.
The one in the field and the one that's not in the field. With the cows, we get very little problems with cows, very little, and we don't intervene that much.
No.
Which I guess tells me that we don't have much to intervene with, because we're in amongst them. We do strip graze with some electric fencing, during the peak growth of grass. So we're seeing the animals every day.
Yeah.
We may not be bringing them in and going through them one by one, but
it's a small enough herd for you to be able to know them as individuals.
Exactly. Yeah, and they are generally, I would say, very healthy. We're with the local vets, and like everything else, we our vets are local. The food source for the hay, the haylage is all local. If it's not off our field, it's within 10 miles. But any issues with health, immediately to the vets. So interestingly, we don't hold or store any antibiotics.
No.
And we don't administer the antibiotics unless we're instructed by the vets. That's not because we can't do that, but it's because, again, we choose to go and talk to the experts and to minimise our reliance on these things and the use of them. So how often have the vets been out? Not too often. The general TB tests, the other admin stuff that you have to do with cattle, like the checkups. But no, it's. I feel that we're healthy enough.
Great. Well, that sounds good.
Yeah. the animals are happy.
Yes, well,
So they seem happy.
Well, thank you very much, Hal. That's been really informative, and I'm sure people will be interested to understand how you're going on, and maybe we'll come and see you later and see what it's like in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously so much more we can talk about.
Yes.
But unfortunately, beyond the surface, it gets really quite technical,
Yes.
beyond my knowledge.
Well, mine too.
Although it's thoroughly interesting, I think it would probably it puts most people off. So I'm glad. I'm glad we could keep it like this. So thank you very much for thinking about us
Not
and
at all.
for visiting. So yeah, it's been lovely. Thank you.